There you go.
All right. I may use the 12 and 12, but I got to have the big book by me. All right. My name is Cynthia Macaholic. I thank God for another day clean and sober, and I'm grateful to be here in this meeting. Reese, I think, had some, I think she's sick. So anyway, because she would be here if she could. Thank you for asking me to step in. All right, so I'll just share my story. So my step one, what it looked like is that I was grew up. My parents, my father was military. They had couples that all had a basement, and in the basement there was a bar. Around the bar was twinkling lights, and all us kids would they didn't have babysitters back then. You just went with them, you know. And so anyway, we would climb down the stairs and sit and watch, and all the other kids would get tired. And you know, when it was, you know, they yell at us and say, you know, go upstairs. And I would be that one kid that would just always continue to go down, sit on the stairs, and watch them. And it wasn't until I got sober and did my first step with my first sponsor that I remember that. And I actually remember making the decision way around 8 or 9 years old that I wanted to be just like that when I grew up. Let's see, my birthday's next month, so that's being recorded, right? So anyway, so I was born in the 50s, right? And during that time, the women, they would dress up and they had pearls and, you know, and just, you know, I mean, you know, we're jeans and, you know, comfortable these days, but, you know, they just look so glamorous, and the music and the partying but what I remembered when I got sober was that at the end of the night, somebody's mother was always getting beat up. And we were kids and we didn't know any difference. The book says you don't know what true from the false. Everything seems normal. Well, us kids, we would play games. No, it's your parents' time to fight this week because mine fought last week, you know. And but I didn't remember, you know, the pearls being torn off and, you know, on the floor or anything like that. I just remember the partying. And as a result of that decision, when I was a young girl, I took that road. You know, partying was what I wanted to do. I was academically did well in school, but the kids I wanted to hang out that were kicking it, you know, weren't really in class. So, you know, I missed the college opportunities and things like that, and I didn't care, you know. And when I was about 18, I got turned out. And, you know, like I said, I made that decision that that type of lifestyle of partying and kicking it and having fun, I remember I used to call it fast men, fast money, fast cars, you know. And that road created a lot of shame inside my soul. And so I didn't want anyone to know what I had done. You know, I chose men uh, that were accepting of that lifestyle from their woman or whatever. And I stayed loaded because I didn't want to remember what I, you know, had become. And so anyway, to fast forward, I left Washington State. My parents got me out the state so that I would be safe and moved to California. And I was about 19. But I carried me with me, and I carried that shame and that big secret. And so when you know, I'm one of those ones like the book says, you know, we do very well. I think the next day I did a handwritten resume and came home with a job, you know. And but I was a liar and the, you know, the secrets and you know, kind of closet drinking and, you know, things like that. And when I got, like I said, when I got sober in the step one, you know, just you know, I did drugs, you know, and Allie, I'm sorry, thank you for your share. It was beautiful. You know, you took me thank you for being here because you took me back, you know, and being asked on the spot, you know, I needed you today. So thank you. But anyway, when my sponsor took me through the book in step one, where it says in the big book, where it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol, and I could connect to that. I remember I was a happy hour girl, right? And had a job, happy hours, my thing at the beginning. At the end, it was a 7-Eleven at 6 a.m. when they unlocked the beer cabinet, right? But I remember, getting off from work, sitting at the bar, and I take that first drink and I could feel the effect going down. And I would just transform into someone other than me, and the guy at the end would say, "What's your name?" And I say, "Whatever you want it to be." And so he know my story. He know my story. I have to remind my husband we met in AA. Okay, so you met me in church. You met me in AA. All right. So, but anyway, and that was, I just wanted. My name is Cynthia. My family still calls me Cindy today, and as a kid they teased me Cinderella, and I love that fantasy, kind of deal. And so being able to take that drink and the effect produced was right up my alley. And so anyway, so I chased that, dragged my kids through that. The book talks about warped lives of blameless children. And that was, unfortunately, that was the rippling effect and the consequences of my drinking. My youngest child was born shortly before CPS, before they tested um, kids, infants for drugs. And, great shame. The book says we will not regret the past. Well, I don't live in the pain of that today as a result of the steps, but I sure do regret that. And but anyway, I dragged him through it. Left California, moved back here because he was a problem, and just kept on drinking. And so at the end of my drinking, I had left my kids with my mom. My father was dying of cancer, and my mother put a missing person report out on me because she didn't know if I was dead or alive. The effect of that decision that I wanted to live that life, and then the allergy that I have. I when I take one, something happens. I can't stop, and when things get horrible and I want to stop, I can't. And but I thought that there was something wrong with me, not that I had this illness. And so anyway, I'm glad my sponsor had me, really look at my drinking. We've got what 4 chapters in the big book, on just on step one, and to kind of 3, whatever. Okay, y'all know the book's over there. Look it up. No. So anyway, but you know what I mean, and I think it was for alcoholics like me that really, because I couldn't see how's one beer gonna do anything, and they say, no, one is too many, so I didn't get it. But what my sponsor had me do was she had me put aside all the drugs and weed through my drinking career, my own drinking career. And I remember that I had was so disgusted with myself, the hate, the self-loathing at bottom, that I woke up, whatever, and I needed a drink so bad that I was drinking California coolers back then. So to let you know how long ago that was. But anyway, I looked over and I saw about that much alcohol at the bottom of my spit up, that much. And I knew it was alcohol and I needed a drink. And I drank through my own spit up to get to that alcohol. And that was when I self-diagnosed myself that I'm alcoholic. And not only the consequences had me on my knees. I knew things were bad. I knew it was, I was getting arrested in front of my kids and, all that kind of bad stuff. But I couldn't see how one beer would do anything. And she introduced me to the doctor's opinion and the phenomena of cravings and how, the action of alcohol on my body is different than my sister's. And I had a chance to see that in real time because a couple years sober, it was a holiday, I would, we're at my mom's, where we gather. And I'm, doing the best I can. I'm sober, go to a meeting before and then go to a meeting after, right? So I'm at the place my mom goes to my sister's, to my sister's glass to pour more wine. And my sister put her hand over the top of the glass and says, I don't want any more. I'm starting to feel it. And that's when, the phenomenon of craving, it says it doesn't exist in everyone, right? And they could look like me, have the same mom and daddy, and all of that, but she don't have what I have. Because when I start feeling it, my body starts, yeah, I'm starting to feel this. There's my foot don't go on the brake, it go on the gas, you know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, so that helped me to understand because, like I said, I thought I was crazy. I thought it was bad. How could I ever have done that to my kids and all of that? So I came here, as it says in step one at the bottom, it says, under the lash of alcoholism, we are driven to AA, and there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. Then and only then do we become as open minded to conviction and as willing to listen as the dying can be. We stand ready to do anything which will lift the merciless obsession from us. And I'm so grateful for my first sponsor. She was loving and she took the time and cared. And she was one of those ones that gave me the extra stuff. That said, okay, you need to uh, go and do this for yourself, your own self care and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? A little bit more than just a big book. I'm so grateful because I needed that. God sends you who you need. And so anyway, so we worked our way through the steps. As a result of step two, I had a real tough time with that. I had a relationship as a kid going to church and Christian and Lutheran by faith, by denomination. And but I thought that I had did too much, too wrong. And my father was dying of cancer, and they got word to me that he wanted to see me, and I would go over and still his pain cocktails. I mean that kind of, in addition to what I already told you with my kids and leaving them and stuff like that. And when you get sober and you look at the for me the scandalous behavior, and I get to step two, and I'm like, there's no way that I can have this relationship that you talk about. And so my sponsor, she was just, so loving. And she said, you know what, you borrow my God, big enough for both of us. And she was the type that just sat and glowed. I mean, loving, just loving and kind. And so anyway, good enough for me because I knew that, I was having those experiences, around 6 months, 6 months or something like that. I got sober at, sorry, I didn't introduce the whole spiel. Okay, so my home group is Women of Principles, Saturday, 12:30 at Serenity Hall. I have a sponsor. Her name is Vivian M. And so forth. So that's that spiel. But anyway, so I got sober at 1504. Okay, they're closed. And got sober in that and Cherry Fellowship, which is still open. But anyway, so I'm at 1504 and I'm probably 6-9 months sober. And that's when because it says we take the steps. And that's when step two, I felt like I took step two because I realized that there wasn't a lot of chaos and drama, because I don't know about y'all, but we was fighting over the last cigarette physically. I got in a physical fight with my sister at on Easter, 6 months pregnant. We're rolling around on the ground. Yeah, that, so we're not playing. And then, so I go from that into AA, and at 6 months, there's that calm and serenity happening. And that's when I believe I took step two. And so anyway, so made the decision, got into the work, the fourth step, and there were two things that I swore I wasn't even going to write down. Just would make me cringe when I thought about them. And when I was, before sobriety, I would drink when I thought about them, right? So I wasn't going to tell nobody, let alone write them down. And there's power in the steps. I believe and I've heard and I've experienced that each step gives you the power to do the next step, right? And I, as the book says, at some of these we balked. So, a little balking in there. And then, I believe, and I don't know, maybe it's another me, but anyway, there's power in the fellowship, the home group, and people were like cheering me on, and I was sharing about what step I was on in the meetings, and with, and they were supporting me, and I was having those spiritual experiences, and I was seeing, like, looking at a tree, and I would see 12 colors of green, and and it's all these wonderful things, right? And so anyway, I started working on that fourth step, with the fire, um, and those two things I said I wouldn't write down, I wrote them down. And then when we did the fifth step down on the lake, I trusted my sponsor enough. I said, well, I'll tell her one of them, but I'll watch her reaction. So I got my paper, right, and I'm like this. And so I read it to her, but I'm watching her, right? And she kept glowing, never changed her tone, and that gave me the courage to tell her the last thing. And for the first time, and I can't remember, right, I was free, right? And so the my fourth step revealed this huge need for attention, which can still pop up here and there, and a lot of other stuff. But I saw that it was kind of right in my face. It's interesting how the patterns of behavior and the belief systems, are exposed in the fourth step. And so anyway, so the first thing I noticed, right, this, in my fourth column, there was a lot of see me, see me. And so I looked up and, the 1504, I got sober in halls, right? So in between the meetings, there's fellowship time. So we play a lot of dominoes and talk shit and, and so this attention defect and is revealing that I looked up. I'm the only woman at the domino table on Saturdays after my counter shift playing dominoes, and all the guys are saying, "Oh, we wish all the women in recovery were like you." And I just said, "I know, I do what I can, right?" And so the fourth step was like, "Oh wow, that's what that's talking about," So anyway. More gets revealed. And so anyway, the journey of steps 6 and 7 has been the journey of the steps, right? And so, one of our good friends, Maurice, says, step 6, stop doing what you don't want to, stop doing what you're doing. Step 7, start doing what you don't want to do, right? And so that's my journey even today with my step 10, step 6 and 7. Step 8, I one of my bad behavior was before I got sober, I played a huge part in uh, causing the divorce of a married couple. I was um, sleeping with him, and his wife called and asked. The rumor was I was cheating on with her husband, and I lied and said, "Oh no, girl, they And so when I got my eighth step, I had asked my sponsor and then a couple other um, folks that had sponsored that had time, and a couple of the responses I got was, no, don't. Make the amends now. It's too soon in the hurt, and so, because it says to, step 9, except when they injure others, and so, but in my spirit, I just knew that that wasn't right because she called me, she asked me, and I lied. And then as a result, they actually, we moved in together and they ended up getting a divorce. So anyway, but it was one of those things that was always there, you know, go in the store and see someone that kind of looked like her, that kind of thing. It was always there. So I had, I love the people that say they had one sponsor, not my story. I've been sober for 25 years. I have to say that too. See, that's what happens when you're not the speaker, right? My sobriety date is January 1st, 2000. I've been sober. This is, in fact, today is 25 years and 10 months. And I've had the pleasure of having probably about five sponsors. Three died, one moved out of state, one I fired. Okay, that's wrong, but I did. And then one, my most recent sponsor, we're real good friends and we're in a women's monthly group together. And then my current sponsor, Vivian. So anyway, so back to step 8. So I get another sponsor, another trip through the steps, and get to step 8. I bring up that other people told me I didn't, wasn't trying to make an amends to this woman, and but it didn't sit with me. And so that sponsor called her sponsor, and he said, "Yeah, you need to make an amends." So I knew a organization that she was a part of, and I sent a little note there, and no response. And my husband and I, we were playing bingo, and I looked up, and that was one of my fears, is that I might be somewhere and see her. And I looked up, and she walked in the door, and I told my husband, I said, "Here's what I did, and I need to make her amends, and I need to do it today." And so my loving husband said, "Well, where's the car keys?" Because she looked like she could whoop your ass. But he was supportive, right? So anyway, yeah, she was like 6 feet. She was tall. She could. And maybe that was part of why I was looking behind my back when I thought I might see her too. So anyway, I'm sitting there and take out a piece of paper, and I knew that based on my experience with the sponsors and making amends, I knew not to run up on anyone. So I need to be clear about my part, my harm, and so I took out a piece of paper and just did some writing, and I had the most wonderful spiritual experience in that moment in the writing, because as I was writing, the wave of selfishness just washed over me, of how I could be that selfish. Now a married woman, and and just the I don't even know how to explain it, but I felt the hurt that I had hurt her. And so I wasn't sure of the approach, so I wrote my number, name and number on a piece of paper. And so as soon as it was over, I approached her, and as soon as she recognized who I was, I could see the veil of her face just change. And so I took one step closer and gave her my number and said, the spiel that we do, it's anonymous, making my amends, and I see that I may have caused you harm. I like to make amends for it. And would you be willing to meet with me at a convenient place and time? And anyway, and so she took my number, and she, it's been probably about 10 years. I don't know the exact, but in that moment, I knew that she wasn't probably going to call me. And so I took one more step forward and made the amends there. And and the grace that we get, even when we do just horrible things that hurt other people. She told me that she was happy that I was sober, and that and wished me, well, and said that, it was, the vow was made by him, it's, blah blah blah. But it was another moment where I felt free, didn't have to look over my shoulder, and so another amends that I made that really moved me was with my manager. So I am working, and my manager is a very nice lady, but unorganized in my mind, right? And so I'm showing up with that kind of attitude. Okay, come on, you know. And so anyway, so we look at our behavior and we see, and so I had it really initiated from me having a resentment right against her, and so then seeing my part and realizing I need to make an amends, right? So I call her the night before and give her the spill, and I say, "Would you be available for coffee?" And I like that, come I've been looking at my relationships and I see that I may have caused you harm and I'd like to make an amends. And are you available for coffee? And so she said, fine. So we meet. I, asked her, is it okay if I use my notes? I don't want to forget anything. And, because I'll get off script and, and so anyway, so I'm making the amends. And then uh, I've been taught that to ask, is there anything I can do to make it right? Is there anything that I'd like to say and how did it make him feel, or in that realm? And then I was taught to say just a quick prayer: God, protect me from any fear that I may have. And so there's a little bit of selfishness in there because I'm thinking, you're gonna write me up, so that's why I say the prayer, right? And so I could receive and hear and grow and change. So anyway, the next thing that came out of her mouth was she said that her mother was an alcoholic and her mother had died of this disease. And when I had called her the night before, it gave her time to reflect. And she felt as though her mother were speaking through me to her. Mm. And all because of my stank attitude, right? I get that gift. So, the rest of the journey for me has been step, 10, 11, and 12, right? Keeping it clean, doing my best. I'm human. I think for me, I'm one of those ones that, as my husband used to say, Bill, Bob, and Cynthia, right? He's not my sponsor, but I want to be his, right? so anyway, my step 10, they told me, I need to go back to my kids. The early on, the living amends is, just start showing up differently. My daughters, I think it was probably a little easier when I made the direct amends to my girls. It was harder with my son. He was the one that saw the belief system that I had bought into, and so we'd be driving home from the AA hall, and they'd have them on the ground on Rainier, you know, and so there was a lot of guilt and around that because I believe that that belief system I brought it into the home. Those guys that did, slaying that stuff, and it was heartbreaking. So the men's with to him was a little bit. I probably made 3 direct amends to him because I was every time he go to prison, I try to, you know, make another amends, create space for healing, And so the last time, because his anger was so, it was just so there. My current sponsor was, I don't know, she was deployed to Afghanistan, and I knew she had a daughter similar to my son. And in a meeting, she had talked about the men's and just the way that she had did it that had, opened up space for her some healing with her daughter. So I emailed my current sponsor in Afghanistan, and she gave me specific, direct, clear directions on what she did with her daughter. That's how this program works. And that was many, many, many years ago that happened. So anyway, he still does what he does. He's a lot better, but he still, but it created the space for healing. What I had to do was realize that, because part of me was like, look, God, man, you got sober parents and I've been sober for X amount of years. Come on, And I mean, really, because that was my ego, right? But I don't get to decide, the healing time of someone else that I caused or played a part of their, hurting them. So anyway, just to wrap up, my went to my father's grave and had an experience there, reading the letter that I wrote to him. My mother, that puts a missing person report on me. I'm now her power of attorney and care for her, and she completely trusts me. And so anyway, step 12, plug let Karen know I put a plug in for corrections. Corrections has been my jam for 20 years. I go into jails and prisons and work release and juvenile, and it's a wonderful way to, just go into the trenches, because a lot of times we're in the rooms and people come in and they already want this thing. But when you go into the jail, it's just something about being with the alcoholic and all you're doing is just planting the seed and letting the rest be what it be. So anyway, I probably meant to say something else, but I just want to thank you for allowing me to share my story, and thank you. And please send a good thought, kind thought out for Reese. I know she's probably healing too. Thank you.